Screams on the tracks. The wind howled through the broken metal walls of the abandoned rail tunnel. Rusty pipes dripped water and old lights blinked with dying sparks. Connor walked slowly along the edge of the cracked tracks. His boots kicked, bits of gravel that echoed like gunshots in the empty silence. He had been traveling alone for days looking for shelter or a working signal. His rations were low, and his comm was dead. But something inside told him to keep moving. Then he heard it, a scream, soft at first, like a whisper caught in the wind, then sharper, louder, full of pain and fear. He froze and listened again. Another cry, 2 voices, female. Desperate. Connor ran as he turned the corner. The tunnel opened into a wide service bay, and there they were. 2 alien women chained to the tracks with thick glowing cuffs. One had shimmering green skin that glowed faintly in the darkness. Her eyes were bright yellow and full of fury. The other had silver white hair falling over her face. Her skin was soft blue and bruised. Both were breathing hard, both struggling against the chains that held them. Above them floated a black drone with red eyes blinking in rhythm. A cruel metallic voice came from its speaker. Pick one, it said. The other dies in 60 seconds. Connor's heart pounded in his chest. His mind screamed for logic, for a plan, but his body moved before he could think. He rushed toward the women. The green-skinned one hissed at him. Stay back, human, this is a trap. He ignored her and knelt beside the chains. His fingers touched the cuffs. Energy pulsed under the surface. Alien tech. Beyond his knowledge. 50 seconds, the silver-haired girl looked at him with wide eyes. Please don't leave us. Connor glanced around. The drone hovered higher, watching. A bomb lay near the track. A countdown blinked on its screen. Red numbers falling fast. 45 seconds. Connor tore off his backpack and dumped everything. Wires, tools, scrap metal, old batteries. Useless unless he got creative. He yanked a screwdriver and jammed it into the bomb casing. The screen flashed a warning. He didn't care. 35 seconds. The green-skinned girl cursed. Why would you save both? We are enemies. Connor growled under his breath. Not today. The bomb sparked. A small arc of lightning hit his arm. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He found a panel under the bomb and ripped it open. More wires. A mess of colors. 20 seconds. He looked back at the girls. Their breathing was faster. They had stopped struggling. They were watching him now. Hoping. He pulled 2 wires free, touched them together. The screen blinked red. 15 seconds, wrong wires. He tried again. More sparks. 10 seconds. He could feel sweat pouring down his face. His hands were shaking. Time was running out. Then he saw it. A black wire hidden behind the others. Thin. Almost invisible. He grabbed it. Ripped it out. The bomb stopped. The red screen faded to black. The drone let out a high-pitched beep and exploded into pieces above them. Silence. For a long second, no one moved. Then the green-skinned woman stared at him like she was seeing something impossible. You really tried to save us both. Connor panted on the ground, his hands burned, but he nodded. He reached over and pulled the cuffs open. One by one. The cuffs snapped and fell. The silver-haired girl collapsed forward. He caught her before she hit the rail. You're safe now. Suddenly the walls shook. A deep rumble came from behind. A second drone flew past the tunnel entrance. They're coming back, the green-skinned girl said sharply. We have to move now. Connor stood and lifted the silver-haired girl onto his shoulder. She was weak but alive. The green-skinned one grabbed a pipe from the ground and stood beside him. What's your name? She asked. Connor. Well, Connor, you just made some powerful enemies. Then let's make them regret it. And the 3 of them ran into the dark tunnel together as sirens echoed behind them, and the war began all over again. The blast that didn't kill. Connor ran through the tunnel with the silver-haired girl still half-conscious on his shoulder. Her breathing was light and fast, like she was running in her dreams. The green-skinned alien, tall, fierce, and angry, ran beside him, gripping the metal pipe like a weapon. Behind them, red lights began flashing as more drones entered the tunnels. The hum of their engines grew louder with every step. He spotted a rusted door on the left side of the wall. It had no lock, just dents and dirt. He slammed into it with his shoulder and it creaked open into a pitch-black shaft. "In here," Connor said. Quickly, the green girl hesitated, then pushed him in and closed the door behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. They held their breath. The sound of drones buzzed just outside. For a moment, it felt like time stopped. Then silence again. The silver-haired girl whispered weakly, "Did we survive? You're not dead if that's what you're asking," Connor said. Breathing hard, he gently lowered her to the floor. She shivered and curled up against the wall. Her body looked so thin and fragile under the dim emergency light inside the shaft. He searched his bag and handed her the last energy bar he had. "Eat it slowly." The green girl leaned on the wall, still gripping her pipe. "You really risked your life for both of us." "That was stupid." "Thanks," Connor replied flatly. She smirked. "But brave." He looked at her properly now for the first time. Her green skin shimmered faintly even in the low light. Her yellow eyes had a glow that wasn't just alien. It was powerful, dangerous, like a storm. "What's your name?" he asked Lyra and her Mika. Lyra replied, "Mika of the ocean colonies." Mika stirred a little from the floor and gave a tiny wave before resting again. Connor nodded slowly. Lyra sat beside the door listening closely. "We're being hunted, Connor. Saving us made you a target. They won't stop until we're dead. Then we don't stop running either." No, Lyra looked at him with a serious expression. "Now we fight back." Connor raised an eyebrow. "With what?" "This pipe." With this, Lyra tapped the small glowing ring around her neck. It blinked and shifted slightly. "My people thought I was too wild. They gave me a control collar. Said I had too much fire. But the explosion must have damaged the system. I can feel my energy again. I can burn through these tunnels like a storm, then." "Do it," Connor said, without thinking. Lyra smiled but didn't move. "I'll need your help to guide it. I can't see through walls like you do." "I don't see through walls, but you feel them," Lyra said simply. "You heard our screams. You found a door. You knew the bomb." Connor paused. He didn't have powers. He wasn't trained. He was just good at not dying, but somehow he always sensed danger. Like his instincts were sharper than they should be. Mika sat up slowly, chewing the last bit of the bar. "We should go deeper. There's an old rebel hideout 5 tunnels down. If we can reach it, there might still be medkits." "And maps." Lyra helped her stand. Connor nodded. "Then we move." They opened the door quietly and slipped out. The hall was clear for now. The emergency lights blinked red every 10 steps. Pipes leaked above them. Smoke filled the air. As they crept down the next path, a drone spotted them. It flashed its siren and charged. Connor shouted, "Now!" Lyra raised both hands and fire burst from her palms. A wave of orange and gold filled the hall. The drone exploded midair and crashed down in pieces. Mika gasped. Lyra's chest heaved from the blast. "Still think I'm just some chained girl on a track," she said, smiling. Connor was about to speak when 3 more drones appeared behind them. One fired. A blast of plasma hit the wall and sprayed them with sparks. They ran again, twisting through side tunnels, dodging falling debris. At one point, Mika tripped. Connor grabbed her before she fell into a hole in the floor. He held her for a second longer than needed. She stared at him. "You're strange for a human. You're welcome." Soon they reached a tunnel with a heavy hatch at the end. Mika pointed at it. "There. That's it." Connor pushed it open and they all slipped inside. The door slammed shut behind them. Silence again. Old crates filled the room. Faded banners of a forgotten rebellion still hung from the walls. A broken console blinked near the corner. "This is it," Mika said, smiling weakly. "Safe for now." Lyra looked around with tired eyes. "I never thought I'd survive that track." "Me neither," Mika whispered. Connor looked at both of them and sat down. "Next time they try to kill you," he said simply, "we kill them first." And for the first time that night, both girls smiled at him. Not like a stranger, not like a savior, but something closer. Something that hadn't happened in years. They trusted him. Hunted through the tunnels. The rebel hideout was cold and full of dust. Every breath stirred old memories of battles long forgotten. Mika sat beside a faded med station while Connor carefully wrapped her bruised arm with a bandage he found in a broken supply crate. She winced, but didn't complain. Lyra paced near the doorway, listening to every sound outside like a wild animal ready to pounce. The silence didn't last long. "There's movement in the upper shafts," Lyra said suddenly. "Heavy steps, not drones." "Walkers," Mika's eyes widened. "Walkers?" Already, Connor stood up and reached for the only thing he had left. An old steel bar. His knuckles tightened around it. "Are we trapped?" Lyra shook her head. "Not yet. There's an old waste tunnel that leads deeper, but it's narrow. One mistake, and you fall 20 feet. Connor nodded. "Then, we don't make mistakes." They moved fast. Lyra led the way with sharp eyes and quiet feet. Mika followed close behind, and Connor stayed at the rear gripping the steel bar like a sword. The waste tunnel was wet and smelled of rust and chemicals. Pipes dripped from the ceiling and old lights flickered above their heads. As they moved through the narrow path, Mika suddenly stopped and pointed down. A thin red laser shimmered across the floor tripwire. She whispered. Connor leaned closer. The wire was connected to a pressure mine buried under cracked tiles. He crouched and worked, fast. His hands moved without thought, like he'd done it 100 times before. Even though he hadn't. Just instinct, one wrong move, and we're all gone. He whispered. Lyra watched him carefully. Her voice was soft. "You're not a soldier, are you?" "No, but you act like one. I just survive." With a snap, Connor disconnected the wire. The laser blinked and disappeared. The mine powered down. Lyra smiled. "Well done, not soldier." They kept moving, but the deeper they went, the louder the footsteps above became. Metal echoed. Voices in an alien tongue shouted orders. "They're following us," Mika said quietly. "They're tracking my collar. It's still active." Connor stopped. "Then we break it." He turned her around gently and examined the device on her neck. It blinked faint blue. He searched the crate he carried and found a small plasma cutter. Almost dead, but just enough juice. "This will sting. Just do it," Mika said, closing her eyes. The cutter sparked to life. Connor held it steady and cut through the collar. It hissed and sparked. Mika trembled but didn't scream. After a few seconds, the collar clattered to the floor in pieces. She touched her neck in shock. "It's off. You're free now," Connor said. Then, the tunnel shook. A blast came from behind. The tunnel collapsed halfway down. Dust and fire exploded into the air. A giant figure emerged from the rubble, taller than any drone, wrapped in armor with glowing red eyes. The warden. Mika gasped. "They sent him. Run!" Lyra shouted. They bolted through the side tunnels. The warden followed with heavy stomps and roars that made the walls shake. Connor saw a small gap in the wall and pushed the girls through it. He stayed behind for 1 second longer, just long enough to throw the old plasma cutter into a leaking gas pipe. The spark ignited. The blast blew the hallway behind them apart. The warden screamed in fury as flames rose around him. But it didn't stop him. "He's still coming," Mika cried. "We can't outrun him. We don't have to outrun him," Connor said, breathing hard. We just need to outthink him. They slid into another tunnel, one that split in 3 different directions. Split up, Lyra said. No. Connor said. That's what he wants. We stick together. Then Mika grabbed Connor's hand tightly. There's a hatch beneath this floor. I remember this part. It drops into an old cargo tube, show me, Connor said. She pulled a loose metal plate aside. Beneath it, a deep shaft opened into darkness. Lyra jumped in first, landing with a grunt. Mika followed. Connor dropped down last. They fell into a wide tunnel filled with old broken crates and rolling darkness. Pipes hissed above. Their boots echoed loudly as they ran. Lyra whispered, "He'll follow." "He always does, then let him." Connor said calmly. He grabbed a power cell from one of the old crates. It was humming faintly. "What are you doing?" Mika asked. He smiled. Giving him something to chase, they dropped the power cell near a cracked support beam and kept running. Moments later, the warden crashed into the cargo tunnel. The power cell blinked and exploded, bringing the roof down on top of him. The dust cleared. Lyra turned back slowly. "Did that stop him?" "I doubt it," Connor said. "But it bought us time." The 3 of them leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Dirt on their faces, pain in their limbs, but they were alive. Mika looked at him quietly and whispered, "Why do you keep risking everything for us?" Connor looked between them and said simply, "Because no one else ever did." Lyra stared at him like she was trying to solve a mystery. "And you're not even bonded to us." "No," Connor said, "but maybe that's why it matters more." And then they kept walking into the dark. 3 strangers hunted by war, but somehow no longer alone. Refuge under fire. The tunnels grew quieter the deeper they went. No footsteps, no drones, only the low hiss of old machines still breathing after years of silence. Rust hung in the air like a taste, and the walls were covered in faded warnings from a war that most people had already forgotten. Connor, Lyra, and Mika stumbled into a vast chamber hidden behind a sealed hatch. The door groaned when Lyra forced it open with her strength, revealing a forgotten underground hideout once used by rebels during the early years of the conflict. Broken screens flickered on the walls. Shelves of dusty weapons lined the corners. There were bunks too, dirty, unused, but still there. "This place was real," Mika whispered. "I thought it was just a myth." Connor checked the perimeter while the 2 alien women collapsed on a nearby bench. He found no fresh footprints, no heat signatures. For now, they were safe. "I'll secure the back corridor," he said without waiting for an answer. He disappeared into the shadows, leaving Mika and Lyra alone under the dim lights. Mika stared at her hands. "You knew they'd hunt us." Lyra didn't look at her. "I always knew. They don't let survivors walk free. Not ones like us." Mika hugged her knees. Her voice was small. "Do you think he regrets saving us?" Lyra finally looked over, her yellow eyes glowing faintly. "Not for 1 second. That man, he's the kind of fool who jumps into fire to rescue ghosts. And I don't think he even knows why." Mika smiled weakly. "He saved us without asking who we were, without knowing what crimes they blamed us for, because he doesn't care about crimes, only choices." Meanwhile, in the back corridor, Connor had found an old med terminal still working. It buzzed softly as he tapped through menus, trying to find antibiotics or nanobot repair fluid for Mika's deeper injuries. As he worked, he didn't notice Lyra step silently into the room behind him. "You've done a lot for us already," she said quietly. He didn't turn around. "Not enough." She walked closer. "Why do you keep trying so hard?" Connor paused for a moment, then finally said, "Because you screamed. Both of you. And I remembered a time when no one came for me when I screamed." Lyra stood beside him now. Her voice was soft but serious. "You know my people would never accept this. You A human. Me. A night flare. Our kind are enemies on sight. Then let them stay blind. Connor answered, I'm not here for their rules. He turned and looked at her. For a long second, neither of them said anything. Then the med terminal beeped. He grabbed a small injector and handed it to her. For Mika's ribs, Lyra took it without breaking eye contact. She nodded once and walked away. Back in the main chamber, Mika was trying to stay awake. Her body was still healing and her mind was cloudy. She felt safer than she had in years, but something still pressed on her heart. A fear that safety never lasted. She looked up when Lyra returned. Here. Lyra said gently, this will help. Mika took the injector and winced as it hissed into her skin. A warm feeling spread through her side and the pain faded. She blinked slowly. Thank you. Lyra sat beside her, arms crossed. Don't thank me. Thank the human. He found it. Mika gave a small laugh. I think he's strange. That makes two of us. Suddenly the lights in the hideout blinked twice and turned red. What's that? Mika asked, sitting up fast. Connor ran in, alert, motion sensors tripped. They're here. Lyra stood immediately, fire pulsing in her palms. How many? Too many, Connor said. Dropships outside. They're locking this place down. Probably think we're trapped. We are, Mika whispered. No, we're not, Connor said. I've seen the layout. There's a utility tunnel under the weapons cache. If we can get it open, we can sneak out before they breach. Lyra raised her hands. I'll hold them back. You'll die, Connor said quickly. Maybe, but it'll buy you time. Mika stood too. Then I stay with her. No, Connor said firmly. No one dies today. Not if I can stop it. He ran toward the weapons rack and grabbed 2 old pulse grenades and a half-working rifle. The others followed. Lyra found the old tunnel hatch and tried to rip it open. It didn't budge. Together, she said. Connor grabbed the edge and pulled with her. Metal screamed. Bolts snapped. And finally, the hatch opened into a narrow shaft. Mika slid in first. Then Connor turned to Lyra. You're next. Not until you go. I'm not going without you. She stared at him like he was a puzzle no one had solved. Why? Because I said I'd save you both. That doesn't stop. Now, Lyra sighed, half angry, half impressed. She slid into the shaft and Connor followed last just as the outer wall exploded and enemy fire filled the air. The hatch closed behind them. Darkness again, but this time, they were together, and still alive. The betrayal plan. The narrow shaft echoed with every movement. They crawled one after another, the metal walls pressing tight around them. For most, it would have felt like a trap. But for Connor, Mika, and Lyra, it felt like survival. They finally dropped into a dark chamber lined with old coolant tanks and dripping wires. The air smelled like burnt ozone and old circuits. Connor hit the floor hard, but stayed silent. Mika landed next, holding her side. Lyra jumped down last, landing like a cat and scanning the shadows with glowing eyes. We need to keep moving, Connor whispered. If they brought trackers, we're still being hunted. Not yet, Lyra replied. I scrambled the last sensor bank behind us. Bought us time. Connor opened a rusted locker in the corner and found half a ration pack. He split it in 3 without speaking and handed it to them. They all sat, eating quietly, listening to the hum of silence. Then something changed. Mika kept glancing toward the far end of the chamber. Her fingers fidgeted with something in her lap. A small, glowing crystal. Connor noticed. What's that? Mika didn't answer at first. Then she held it up. It's a communicator shard. From my people. Why didn't you tell us? Lyra snapped. Because they offered us a way out, Mika said slowly. But only if we give them him. She looked at Connor. Lyra's eyes narrowed. You made contact with the colonies. I didn't ask for it, Mika said. They found me. They're listening now. They want Connor handed over, and they'll give us freedom. Lyra stepped forward, fire forming faintly in her palm. You're betraying him? No, Mika said firmly. I'm telling you so we can decide together. Connor leaned back against the wall and took a breath. Let me guess. I'm worth more to them dead than alive, actually. Mika replied. They want to study you. They think a human who can disrupt their weapon locks, disarm alien bombs, survive firestorms, and instinctively sense traps must be dangerous tech. Maybe something they've never seen. Connor laughed dryly. I'm not special. I'm just not afraid to die for the right thing. That's exactly what makes you special. Mika whispered. Lyra stared between them both. Then she sighed and extinguished the flame in her hand. So what do we do? Connor looked straight at Mika. You with me? Mika didn't hesitate. Yes. I'm not giving them anything. Not you. Not Lyra. Not even myself. Lyra nodded. Good. Because I didn't tell you something either. She pulled a small chip from under her armor. It blinked red. I contacted my people too. They wanted me to deliver both of you in exchange for lifting my exile. Connor and Mika froze. But I crushed the deal, Lyra said. Told them to forget my name. Why? Connor asked. Because somewhere between those tracks and that fire, I stopped thinking of you two as weights around my neck. Lyra turned and walked toward the door. You're not chains. You're the reason I still breathe. Then the chamber lit up. A bright light burst through the ceiling vent. A voice echoed from a floating drone above. Target confirmed. Human subject located. Lock-in laser sights appeared all around them. Soldiers from both the Night Flare clans and ocean colonies dropped from hidden passages. Each wore armor with glowing eyes and stun cannons. They really teamed up, Connor muttered. No, Lyra said. They teamed up against you. The leader of the strike team stepped forward. A tall woman with glimmering eyes and a blade made of white energy. Mika, step away from the human, she ordered. You too, Lyra no, Mika said quietly. We stay with him. The commander raised her hand. 10 rifles locked onto Connor. Lyra suddenly smirked. I'm warning you. If you fire, you'll regret it. And why is that? Because we didn't come unprepared. Connor tapped his comlink, recently repaired with salvaged tech. A soft beep echoed in the chamber. A second later, the room shook. The hallway behind the soldiers erupted in flame as an old thermal vent overloaded. Now Connor shouted. Lyra slammed her fist into the ground. Fire surged upward in a wall between them and the strike team. Mika tossed her crystal against the floor. It shattered, and a pulse of blue light fried every sensor nearby. Connor grabbed both girls' hands and pulled them into the vent tunnel Lyra had spotted earlier. They ran fast as alarms echoed behind them. The hallway twisted and dropped into an old service rail. They didn't stop running until their lungs burned and their boots ached. Finally, they reached a collapsed wall that opened into the outside. Air stars filled the sky above. Night at last. Fresh air. Moonlight. They collapsed on the ground in silence. Mika looked up at the stars. They'll still come after us, let them, Connor said. Lyra leaned back on her elbows. I've been hunted for years. Feels different when I'm not alone. Connor looked at both of them. So now we've betrayed 2 armies. We're not traitors, Mika said softly. No, Lyra added. We're just done choosing sides that never protected us. Connor smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time we made a side of our own. 2 queens, 1 stand. The moonlight was cold and pale as it washed over the rocky valley. The 3 fugitives, Connor, Lyra, and Mika, rested against a fallen transport husk, catching their breath after a night that felt like war. Their clothes were torn, faces marked with dust and smoke. But their eyes held fire. Connor tilted his head back and stared at the stars. We can't keep running forever. Then we stop, Lyra said flatly. Mika glanced at her. Stop. Here. Not here, Lyra replied. But soon. We stop running when we end the chase, Connor raised an eyebrow. And how do 3 hunted outlaws end a chase led by 2 alien governments? By showing them what happens when you push the wrong people too far, Lyra said. Connor stood and walked to a nearby boulder. He placed both hands on it, silent. Then he looked at the others. They're still tracking us. No matter what tunnels we crawl through or what vents we blow up, they won't stop until they see our bodies. Mika touched the collar scar on her neck. They think they own us. Then maybe it's time to remind them we're not theirs. Lyra added, her voice sharp. The 3 looked at each other. No words. Just a silent agreement. Something stronger than a pact. They would make their stand. Together, they reached an old mining station built into the side of a cliff. It had long been abandoned, but the structure was still solid. Metal beams, watchtowers, heavy gates. A place that once held hundreds of workers and now stood silent under starlight. We can fortify this place, Mika said, her voice steadier than before. There's power running from those old reactors, Connor pointed out. I can bring the defenses online. I'll trap the upper trails, Lyra added. If they try to come down the ridge, they'll burn hours past like seconds as they worked. Connor rewired the control room with bare hands and scraped fingers. Mika mapped out the high points and patched the broken sensor grid. Lyra, fierce and glowing, scattered charges and energy snares along the rocky cliffs, like a hunter preparing for her final fight. And as dawn broke, the first ship arrived. A sleek black dropship with blue engines hovered over the valley. Then another and another. Soon, the sky was filled with carriers from both the ocean colonies and the Night Flare faction. They sent everyone, Mika whispered. Connor stood at the top of the station, holding a salvaged rifle and watching the enemy descend like shadows. Let them come, Lyra emerged beside him, her eyes glowing bright gold. They think they're facing prey. They're not, Connor said. They're facing survivors. The enemy approached slowly. Rows of armored soldiers moved through the valley, weapons raised. Drones flew overhead scanning the cliffs. From the lead ship, 2 figures stepped forward. One was a Night Flare general, tall and burning with pride. The other, a noblewoman from the colonies with flowing robes and silver armor, stepped forward. Human, the general shouted. You've stolen what isn't yours, Mika growled under her breath. We were never theirs. You are outnumbered, the noblewoman called. Stand down. No more tricks. Connor walked to the ledge. His voice was calm, but strong. You made a mistake. You chained them. You tried to break them. You gave them no choice but to die, but I gave them a choice to live. The general sneered. Then you will all die together. Lyra stepped forward. Suddenly, the valley exploded with fire. Traps ignited. Drones dropped like flies. A rock slide triggered by Mika's seismic charges buried half the vanguard. Then Lyra leapt from the ledge, her fists glowing with heat, and smashed into the front lines like a falling star. Mika activated the defense turrets. Energy blasts rained down on the advancing troops. Connor took position at the high tower, firing with precision, guiding his allies through the chaos with nothing but instinct. The enemy didn't expect a war. They expected fear. They got fury. Lyra fought like a flame unleashed, burning everything in her path. Mika moved through shadows, freezing weapons, jamming comms, disabling squads without being seen. And Connor, no armor, no powers, just a man, stood where soldiers ran, defying every expectation. The sun rose higher by mid-morning. Only smoke and silence remained. The commanders had retreated. The ships were gone. The banners of 2 alien nations lay buried under rubble. Connor stood at the edge of the station, his face bruised and bleeding, but his eyes unshaken. Lyra limped up beside him. One arm burned but still strong. Mika leaned on the wall nearby, exhausted but smiling. "We won," Connor whispered. "Not the war," Mika said, "but a battle they'll never forget." Lyra looked at him seriously. "They'll come again." "Then, we'll be ready," Connor said. For the first time in his life, he wasn't alone. He had a home, not made of steel or walls, but made of loyalty. And he had two warriors who stood beside him not because they owed him, but because they chose him. As the wind carried ash across the cliffs, Mika stepped beside him and whispered, softly, "You didn't choose one of us. You chose both. And now, we choose you." And in the stillness of that broken mining station, something new was born. Not a family. Not yet. But something close. Something real. Wives of the war survivor. The fire had burned out days ago, but the smoke still lingered in the cliffs like ghosts refusing to leave. The mining station, once forgotten, was now a place of stories. The world above called it a battlefield, but to the three fugitives who stood in its center, it was something else. It was home. Connor sat beside a broken turret, hands stained with grease, repairing what he could salvage. The winds brushed his hair as he worked, calm but alert. His ears still listened for approaching engines, but no new ones had come, not since the enemy fled. He heard soft footsteps behind him. "You've been out here since dawn," Mika said. Her voice was gentle but sharper than usual, like she was holding back something heavy. Connor smiled faintly, without turning old habit. "I like to fix things that aren't screaming or exploding for once." She crouched beside him and placed her hand over his. "What about things that are broken in different ways?" He looked at her now. "What do you mean?" Mika's sea blue eyes shimmered as she whispered, "I mean, like me." He didn't flinch. Instead, he held her gaze and replied, "You're not broken. Just someone who's never been protected properly." Mika closed. Her eyes, "You were the first person who didn't see me as a tool or weakness. You didn't even ask me to prove I was worth saving." Connor replied simply, "You were screaming. That was enough." A shadow moved near the stairs. Lyra stood watching them, arms crossed, but her expression wasn't cold. It was curious. Calm, she stepped forward, her green skin glowing faintly in the sun. "I came to tell you both. Something strange is happening." Connor stood. "Strange how?" Lyra tilted her head. Two of the Night Flare scouts returned. Not to fight. They dropped their weapons and surrendered. They said, "They heard what we did here, and they wanted to follow." Connor frowned. "You mean they're defecting?" Mika stood beside him now. "Why?" Lyra looked straight at him. "Because of you." Connor looked between them both. "I didn't do this alone," Lyra shook her head. "They say it's the first time a human stood between two warring races and made them fight together. Not by force, but by choice. That kind of story spreads." Connor ran a hand through his hair. "So what now? We start a revolution?" Lyra smirked. "We start a life." The station changed over the next few weeks. More defectors came. Wounded soldiers, exiles, outcasts, people with no side. Left but still breathing. They built with whatever they could find. Scrap metal for walls, solar mirrors for power, cracked communication screens to reach the outer worlds. And every day, Mika organized the newcomers, teaching them the hidden routes and water lines. Lyra trained the fighters, shaping them into warriors who fought smart, not angry. And Connor, he led quietly. No speeches, just actions. Always the first to carry supplies, fix wiring, or step into danger when needed. No one called him a commander, but they followed him anyway. One night under the twin moons, a quiet ceremony took place. Not by law or by tradition, but by choice. Connor stood between two pillars of stone, wearing the same jacket he had when he saved them. He was nervous, more nervous than when facing drones or bombs. His hands trembled slightly as Lyra walked up in her ceremonial night flare cloak, red threads running through her black armor. She stood before him and whispered, "I never thought I'd share breath with a human, but now I wouldn't trade this moment for anything in my galaxy." Then Mika stepped forward, her ocean blue dress flowing gently in the wind. Her silver hair shined under the moons. She held Connor's hand and said softly, "I've drowned before, in war, in silence. But with you, I breathe." Connor looked between them both, stunned. "I didn't think this was possible." Lyra smirked. "Neither did we. But you ruined our plans. You saved us," Mika whispered. "And we choose to stay saved. With you, there were no witnesses but the stars." But in that moment, Connor wasn't a fugitive, or a survivor, or even a hero. He was something new, something whole. Later, as they lay beneath the stars just outside the station walls, Lyra rested her head on Connor's shoulder and stared at the sky. "They'll come back someday, you know. The generals, the empires, the old anger. Then we'll face them again," Connor said softly. Together, Mika sat beside them, her hand wrapped in his. "Do you think people will believe what we've built?" Lyra chuckled. "They believed we were enemies. Now, look at us." Connor closed his eyes. "Let them write whatever stories they want. The truth is simple. I didn't pick one of you. I saved you both. And somehow, you both saved me." The stars blinked above like a quiet promise. No more chains. No more tracks, just the sound of breathing, alive and free, and under twin moons, in a valley where war once echoed. A human and two alien queens began a future that no one saw coming, but one they would defend, together, forever, the end.